All right, let's go ahead and get started. First, I want to apologize for us running a little bit late. We had some business that needed to be taken care of. So again, my apologies for that. So welcome to the City of Temple City Council meeting for May 20th, 2021. Currently, it is about 5:21. Please rise as Mayor Pro Tem Judy Morales leads us in the invocation, followed by our pledge, which will be led by City Secretary Jana Lou Ellen.
Join me, please. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come today with confidence as we place our petitions. We come today with gratitude and love. We thank you for the fulfillment of your word by the resurrection of Jesus and his ascension into heaven so that each of us who believe will be saved. We ask for blessing and protection upon our cities who are reopening businesses and services, blessings for our schools, our churches, and all houses of worship, and all of the people who work to serve the community. We ask for wisdom for our nation's leaders, our local leaders, our mayor, our city council, our city staff, and all those who work to make our city a better place. We pray for those who are serving and for those who have served our country and whom we will remember on Memorial Day this weekend, for those who lost their lives in defending our country, and for the families who survived them and mourn them. We pray for courage, strength, and peace as we celebrate them. We especially pray for all those during this time of the pandemic and for those who have been affected by the coronavirus and those who are at risk. We thank you for the COVID-19 vaccine that will save many lives. Father, we offer continued gratitude and support for all our healthcare workers, our police, our firemen, and all those who protect our health and reaching out to all those in need during this crisis. Give them each one of your blessings. We ask you to give courage and strength for those who have lost their jobs and are struggling to get food and care for their families, for our neighbors. We pray that you will give hope for those who are despaired and for those who need our love and compassion. Enlighten our minds with your wisdom, fill our hearts with your love, and grant the petitions that each year has made. It is according to your will. Almighty Father, we ask all this through your precious Son, Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. Now we'll move on to the public comment section of this meeting. Citizens who wish to address the council on any matter may do so, as long as you've signed up prior to the meeting. Public comments will be received, and please limit those comments to no more than 3 minutes. We do have, it looks like, one person that signed up during the public comment section, Mr. Lytle. State your, yes, sir.
Alan Lytle, I live at 504B Paseo del Plata here in Temple, Texas. Council members and Mayor Davis, I have a request for one council member, doesn't matter which one, that you pull item N from the consent agenda, which is the resolution for denying Encore its increase. I applaud you for denying it. But what I would like to have or see happen is that it be amended in wording to include the $97 million plus that they want so that the public knows just what a good job you guys are doing. The other item on the agenda, consent agenda, pardon me, item R, which is once again one of my favorites. That is about the downtown project with the Arcadia Theater, the Hahn Hotel, and this Turner, I don't know how to pronounce that part of their name, I apologize. And apparently we didn't quite give them enough incentive. Now they want us to help them by giving them half the parking lot and guaranteeing them all the retail space. I hope you realize that I don't think this is ever going to happen, and I don't think it's ever going to be finished. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to item number 3 is a request has been made by Mr. Jimmy Probilski to address the council regarding the tax rate studies, property values, and the property tax burden. Mr. Probilski.
Excuse me, it'll take me a minute to orient. First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for serving. It's a thankless job. Some of you I know real well, some I don't know much at all. Most of you know me as Melissa's husband. God bless her. Anyway,
Amen.
anyhow, property taxes, what's the big deal? It is a big deal to a lot of people, most people. It's a big deal to y'all, it's a big deal to me, it's a big deal to most people, and for various different reasons. What I want to talk about today is who it affects, and who it affects the most. And sometimes we don't realize that we're so far removed, we forget who it affects and exactly how much. I'm going to share with you today some real life stories, some real case studies. I didn't have to look hard to find them, but I found them quite easy. And we don't hear about it much. You know, we just had a bond election for Temple College. I like Temple College. I was for Temple College. And we were told $40, $50 per $100,000 value. So $100 doesn't sound like a lot of money. It's not to me. A lot of people it's a lot. To a lot of people, it's Christmas. To a lot of people, that $100 is a vacation. And the vacation may be going somewhere right around here. How do I know that? Because that's how I grew up. I went on 2 vacations in my life. $100 was a whole lot of money when I was growing up. $100 can be a couple pairs of shoes. $100 can be a dinner out with your wife, a fancy dinner. A lot of us spend $100 in 2 or 3 days just going to lunch. I probably spend more because I can eat a lot. But $100 is a lot. I know people that they drive from West Temple to Buc-ee's to save a nickel on a gallon of gas. And they put 15 gallons there at 75 cents. If they fill up once a week, it comes out to be $40-something. I'm not driving to Buc-ee's to save $40, but there's a lot of people that do. There's people go to Aldi to save 10 or 15 cents on a dozen eggs. When's the last time you drove to Aldi to save 15 cents on a dozen eggs? It's out there, and there's a lot of people. I know we need taxes. I'm not against taxes. I'm asking you to consider. Even a penny or two. And last year, y'all reduced the rate by a couple of cents. And that was a good, a large gesture of goodwill. So I'm going to try to keep this to 15 minutes. If it goes over that, you'll probably see my wife come in and drag me out of here. But where we're going to start, I just want to go. We got 30 slides. I hope to do it in 15 minutes. I won't go ahead and tell you who I am, but I will a little bit. I grew up here, went to school at Temple High, played football. Jessica was cheering on the sideline. Played football with Councilman Williams' son. I did many years with Mayor Davis. I grew up here. It's a good place to be from. It's a good place to come back to. I have friends moving from all over the country to come here. I have people coming from all over California. They come here. Why? It's a good place to be. It's a cheap place to be, or it was. It's not so much. I need to advance it. I'm getting long-winded. But to go ahead and finish, graduated Temple, went to Temple College, went to Mary Hardin Baylor, got 2 degrees there. One wasn't enough. Got my bachelor's and master's both in business. You too. There it is. There you go. Okay, so let's get going. How much has property taxes increased? And the numbers you're seeing are all from local entities, being the Bell County Appraisal District is from the city of Temple. It's from the Texas Workforce Commission. I made the note of it here. I left a copy on the slides at your desk there. The sources didn't come out because some of them were in black, but I'll be glad to share it with you. 66% increase in the last 10 years. That's 6% a year, or 264% more than the inflation rate. 2.7, that's a tax rate, but 2.8 is the average interest rate. Our property tax is too high. I don't know, 20,000 people think so. They blame the appraisal district. Appraisal district doesn't set rate. Appraisal district doesn't collect taxes. That's Mr. Lutke's job. And it's Billy White's job to assess the values. A normal years is anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 protests. I'm doing 5 myself this year, 6 actually. But anyway, 2019, there was 10,000. Now there's 19,000. I talked to a couple of directors, it's going to be over 20,000 this year. That's just an indicator. So why the big increase? Property tax has gone up over 45% in the last 4 years, probably another 10 or 15% this year. The municipal tax rate, now folks on Temple, not just picking on Temple because it's not just Temple, but we are here at the city of Temple. Municipal tax rate has increased 20% over the last several years. Last year, it actually a little less than that now because y'all decreased it. That was of May 2020. Okay, Alan, it's not changing. Okay. So why on earth would anybody protest their taxes? I've been told by people in this room that, aren't you glad? Be glad your values of your homes are going up. Be glad your house is worth more. Well, what comes with that is higher costs. Your insurance rates go up, your taxes go up, even if you lower the rate, sometimes the taxes go up. And the biggest thing is it's unrealized gain. You don't really gain anything from someone's opinion of what your house is worth. That's what bothers people. Now, I wanted to talk about who this hurts the most. When you look at residential properties, 55% own their homes in Temple. This was in 2019. 2013, that number was 35%. Today, it's over 50 that rent their home. It was 35% rental in 2013. 2019, 45%. Today, by some estimates, over 50%. Now, there are big advantages to owning your home. The exemptions, homestead, disability, veterans, seniors, caps on the increase. So there are advantages to owning the home, but only 50% own their home. Disadvantage for renters, there is no limit on the increase on rental property, none. Sky's the limit. No exemptions, because they're not homesteaded. They're not owned by the tenant. They're treated more like commercial properties. What about commercial properties? We won't have time for that, so I'm going to skip that. But they do get some incentives. They get tax abatements. I'm going to need some water. They get deductions and depreciation. Depreciation actually be a bad thing for some people if you hold on to it too long. But commercial properties, not switching. Oh, so who rents? Anybody know anybody rents? I do. Those that can't buy, students, elderly, the poor. Those that don't or won't take care of the property, those that can least afford it. Small business is one of the biggest obstacles of starting a business is finding a place to rent. We're looking at going to $3 a square foot. You realize 35% of rental revenue goes to property tax, local property taxes? 3 years ago, that was 20%. Today, it's 35%. I got these numbers from 2 of the largest property managers in Temple. So a third. Someone pays $1,000, they're paying $333 to stay in that home. It's rent. Speaking about average salaries in Temple, this came from the U.S. You might not can read it there. I put black on black, and that's hard to read. I don't know why I did that, but hourly rate is $16.68. The household median is $55,000. Per capita is $28,000. Poverty rate's 16.1. That's 1 in 6. That's Temple, Texas, as of 2019. 1 in 6. What is the definition of the poverty rate? $26,500 for a family of 4. Can you imagine living on $26,500? 16% of our citizens, our fellow citizens, can imagine because they live it every day. For an individual, it's $12,600. I know we have a lot of challenges. The comptroller says that Bell County is undervalued. So we got a new tax appraiser. He's taking care of that. We're no longer undervalued, probably overvalued. Also, at a meeting last year, I heard him say that one of the strategies was to shift the burden to the businesses. Shift the burden to the businesses. Anybody business owners? Renters pay higher property taxes. These are just a couple of true case studies. I didn't have to look far. Almost everyone I pulled up with, this was the exact picture. I'll show you 50 of them. I'm only going to show you 5. This property last year was assessed at $235,000, now $521,000. This is on South 37th Street, the 1,000 block. You know any properties in that block that are worth $500,000? If this goes through, the taxes will go to nearly $14,000. And that's before the nickel added by Temple College. The difference is $7,564. Who pays that? The tenant, the owner? It's that happens to be 2 duplexes. If he passes that along, which I've been told that too, pass it along to your tenant, pass it along to the customer. If you did, that's $157 per month per tenant for that particular property. 12 Christmases. This one happens to be my nephew's house. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing it. He bought the house in 2012. He's a young guy. He's an engineer, Texas Hydraulics. And he has 2 young children. He's the 3rd one on the way. Proposed value is going to double this year. That's the proposed value. They fought it last year and only had it raised 30-some odd %. What does that do to the taxes? When you look at the rate increase over when time he bought his house in 2012, it's a 20% increase. The value increase is 207%, and when you put together two together, it's 241%. You don't add 207 and 20, you multiply. That is a multiplier. That's what the tax rate does. And what that does is ends up in an increase of 241%. The actual increase just from the municipal tax rate is 34%. The additional 14% there is just from not lowering the rate. That's leaving the rate the same. Okay, here's another, it's not working. Excuse me. This is a commercial property. $64,000 in 2015. Last year, they wanted $315,000. It was going to increase my taxes by $5,100. Couldn't pass that on to the commercial tenant. Into the $500 a month. We did work it out, but I happen to know how to deal with the appraisal district. So I took a 50% increase, and I ate that. And that's okay. Sometimes we do that. I know some of us have rental properties and other properties we have to eat the cost. But when they get really high, it gets to the point you can't eat the cost. You can't pass it on to the tenant. This is case 4. This is a house last year valued at $50,000, this year $101,000. That's probably what it's going to be. I don't think they'll win that. Anybody protests that. It's a rent house. In order to recover the rent, it's $145 a month. $145 a month. Somebody's either the landlord or the tenant. This person works at the VA that lives in that house, walks to work. $145 a month. Buys a lot of shoes, lots of shirts, and lots of lunches. Case 5, this is another one. They're proposing a huge increase on $119 a month. $119 a month. That's if there's no increase, no rate increase. That's if it's just what they get from the proposed value. In the last one, excuse me, I can't see it. I think that's that. So what is the ask? Last year I asked you to lower the tax rate, and you did, 2 cents. And the point is not here to discuss every single aspect because we don't have enough time for that. I know there's many different funds. I know there's money comes from different places and goes different places. Not asking you lower 10%. I'm not asking you lower it a whole lot at all. And one way to do it is over time. One way to do it is don't spend the windfall. The windfall being, I think last year was 9.89% increase from property taxes that the city got. It was $3.1 million. About $1 million of that was from new property. Another was from existing homes. And I don't know if that's where y'all found the money to cut or not. That's what I talk about the windfall. The growth in the value is a windfall. The benefits of lowering the tax rate, it helps those that need it the most. It helps that tenant on 3rd Street that walks the VA, that wants to buy their son a pair of shoes but can't. Now they said the rent's going to go up $50 a month. Also, it stimulates the economy. If they're not spending on rent, they're spending it on shoes, coats. They're spending it on food and restaurants. And it builds goodwill, so when you do need a bond or when the bad times hit, builds goodwill. This is a quote often quoted and attributed to Benjamin Franklin. However, he didn't say it. I don't know who did, but I found out he didn't actually say it. Or at least that's what I was told from the other research. Penny saved is a penny earned. That's only half of it. Everybody knows that. The only reason I learned the other part the other day, because I was watching the episode of Andy Griffin, he said a penny saved is a penny earned, is a penny taxed. That's the rest of that quote. So how do you reduce the tax rate? Growth. Got $1 million extra last year on it. Increase in values, got $2 million on that last year. That's good. Been told that's why growth is good. I've been told growth over and over is good. I don't have nothing against growth, but it's been told over and over again, growth is good, expands the base and lowers the taxes. So that's basically what you see here is the economies of scale. Everybody pitching a little, so a lot or less and more. How are they figured? Property, we know this property value times the rate equals taxes and growth. It's the G. The formula there is the reduction, how you get the reduction in the tax burden. So how, well, we don't need to say it. We already talked about that. We know how they're valued, how they're figured. So who sets this property tax rate? When I went over there to talk to the appraisal district, they tell me, go talk to your city councilman, go talk to your school board members, go talk to the county commissioners. They don't want to set tax. We don't have anything to do with that. Been told at other places, well, go talk to the appraisal district. They're the problem. No, in fact, it's all of us are responsible for it. So these are some of the municipal tax rates. I was going to do a little Q&A. The lowest tax rate is 0. That's Little River Academy. They don't even have one. I'm not proposing that. That's not a good idea. They don't have very good streets. And they have to contract everything out. So I'm not proposing that. In fact, I'm not proposing anything. I just hope you'll listen to what I say and consider the other 50% of the people that rent, how bad that it affects them. I would think Bartlett, as little as was, have a higher rate. They don't have anything to tax, but theirs is 42.5 cents. Clean is almost 75 cents. Of course, from understanding that, me being a realtor and doing a long time, it's because their value is a lot lower. I understand that. The median is 59.59. Temple stayed there for a long time. Just crept up over the last few years, and I'm not here to criticize. I'm not here to tell anybody that's wrong or not what's not right, but what I'm here to tell you, it affects a lot of people, a lot more than you might ever think it affects. So what should it be? I don't know. What can it be? I don't know, but City of Temple's at 0.6525 currently. So who has reduced rates recently? You see Temple ISD, Belton ISD, and Temple and Belton there because that's the two largest taxing entities here. It's nothing special. Temple ISD has reduced theirs the last couple of years, 9%. Belton ISD, 17%. The City of Temple, 1.3%, and for Belton. They haven't been able to reduce it at all. At least they haven't increased it. But again, they don't have a lot to tax. Now, I've been told, well, these school districts, they get money from other places. From what I understand, only 21% of the revenue for our budget comes from property taxes. So we get a lot of money other places too. 80%, in fact. And again, I'm not being critical or mean. I'm just saying take a good look at it. Remember some of these people we've talked about. So how much does it cost the city to reduce the tax rate? A projected budget for 2022, and this comes from the plan they put out last year, is over $221 million. And from my understanding, it may change and will probably change this year because of values, but last year, 1 cent equaled $450,000 or thereabouts. 4 cents would be $1.8 million. That's 0.8% of the budget. $0.04 reduction is 0.8% of the budget. I'm asking a lot. I ain't asking that even. 1 cent's even less. Does the city have a target rate? Do they have a strategy? Or does the tax rate just end up being the last thing considered? We know what we need to do. We got plans. We're doing this. And it's great. We've done a lot of great stuff. I'm not here again to criticize that. But the fact of the matter is, 50% of the people, even the slightest raise can do a lot in it. So again, I know I took longer than 15 minutes, not here to criticize. Y'all do a great job. Everybody over here, I've been to budget parties, believe it or not. Jennifer Emerson's house, Tracy. They work hard on that budget. It's a beautiful budget. They do a great job. I'm not here to blame anybody. I'm not here to criticize anybody. I'm not here to point fingers. What I am asking you is to realize there's a lot of people, and in the current situation with the values going up, there's a lot of people going to be paying a lot more money. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them now. Or not.
I don't have a question. I've got a few comments, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. First off, full disclosure, Jimmy and I are friends, been friends a long time. His brother, Jody, we're friends. We've deer hunted together. Jody and I coached baseball together. That's where I first met him. So, as I look across this room, I see a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances. And so, and I know that everyone's here because they wanted to hear what Jimmy had to say, and I appreciate it. You and I have talked about this on the phone directly a couple of times because of our personal relationship. And, you joked the other day when you called me, you said, "I'm surprised you answered the phone." And I said, "Well, Jimmy, I've got caller ID," and I still answered the phone. So, I mean, there's no animosity. And again, I appreciate your thoughts, well thought out, well presented. From this side of the table, so to speak, a penny, $450,000.
Something like that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people are under the impression that the city takes in a lot of tax money, and there's this big room somewhere at City Hall that we just shovel cash into it every October when the money comes out. Whenever the tax notices go out, and we go in there and we grab a little bit of money out of there as we need it. But at the end of the day, there's still a big stack of money sitting in there. So you mentioned in your presentation that that last year, due to growth, it was $2 million, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. It costs about $2 million to build 1 mile of road. Big fire truck, $1.3 million. Health insurance rates go up every year. Salaries go up every year. The cost of doing business in the city goes up every year. There's debt to service. There are projects to do. There are raises to give. And at the end of the day, at 65 cents, there's a very thin margin. We always talk about, Ms. Bernard, we talk about hopefully, overestimating our expenses, underestimating our revenue. This is my 9th year to serve on the city council. We have held that philosophy every year. And every year we've balanced the budget, and every year we've had a decent tax rate. If you take away the 4 cents, that is the parks bond, that was voter approved, we're at 61 cents. Whenever I started back in 2013, the tax rate was 59 cents. So the tax rate has gone up approximately 2 cents. You said Port Belton. I hate to mention names, but they're at about 65 cents, just like we are. I promise you that the citizens of Temple get more out of their 65 cents in services, in infrastructure, in safety than residents of the city of Belton ever dreamed of getting. So if we're talking about tax rates, I will put the city of Temple's tax rate up against anybody else's as far as the efficiency of every dollar that comes in the city of Temple. I own rent property too. I ate every bit of that tax rate last year. And I'm deciding now if that's something that I can do, if I can afford to eat it again. So my question, assuming everybody believes me when I say there's not a room full of money somewhere at City Hall, is what are you willing to give up?
Yeah, and I understand that. And again, I'm not here to attack anyone or point fingers or accuse.
Yeah.
In 2012, the rate was 56 cents. In 2013, it went to 59. That is correct. And I know there's 4 cents that was a voter approved.
Mhm.
I'm not here to argue any points. I
Right.
get that. I understand that. I do get that. My whole point is to point out to each of you sitting there that there are a lot, it does not affect me. In fact, I've sold most of my rental properties. Good time sale, so I sold them. I still own a few. This isn't about me. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the average salary, salaries, and what this does to rents, it affects a lot of people. I'm not blaming anyone at all. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone at all. What I wanted to do is, last year I went down that road. And I don't want to pick the budget apart. My wife works here and I don't want to get involved in that. So this year I decided to come talk to you, trying to reach one-on-one. That's a lot more difficult. So to come here and talk to you to give the presentation of numbers that are supplied, that are factual numbers, it's not to beat anyone up. I know each and every one of you try to do a good job, and you try and you do. I don't want to do it. Thought I did. I bought a house in Western Hills and I sold it real quick. But anyway, I do not want to do it. And because it is a thankless job. It's not criticizing. Not criticizing anyone at all.
Yeah, and I don't take it that way.
Okay.
And we need to wrap this, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to be rude. Typically, these public appearances is what this is
Yeah.
called, are 5 minutes.
Sure.
And
No, and y'all let me sign up and forward, and that's,
Yeah.
I was trying to keep it at
which
15.
that was been in the rules a little bit, but that's okay
Yeah.
too. We'll do that.
Well-
But I think this is an important conversation. And whenever I saw the crowd in here, I thought it was more important to have this conversation, to allow you to say, whatever you felt like you needed to. But at the same time, I think it's very important that whenever you talk about, you said last year, you said, Tim, there's a nickel. There's got to be a nickel in there that we can lower it. Well, a nickel's $2.5 million bucks. There's not $2.5 million left, quote unquote,
Right.
out there. So again, my question is, and then we need to end it at this.
Yeah.
So I do get the last word on this.
Okay.
Yeah, my question to you then is really, what are you willing to give up? Because I'll tell you what I get. I get the calls about the pothole. I get the calls about, why is we called the police, at some point, and so why do we have this delay in getting an officer to us? Right now, we're 19 officers down.
Right.
With the political climate right now, it's hard to find an officer.
It is. That's probably more
And
than,
you know what it costs? It takes a year and it costs $100,000 to put a new officer on the street.
I
So,
understand that. I'm not here to debate the budget, because you and I have done that, and I don't want to get into that with you. Because people take stuff personal. I don't want to get into that with you. I understand that. Because I can give you some facts and details right now, and it will get heated, so I don't want to do that. I understand. I told you that I understand.
Yeah.
But I also understand the budget pretty well. And we can pick that apart if we want to, because you and I have sat down and done that. And I don't want to make that about that. All I want to do is raise awareness of what a penny is.
Yeah.
It's not a lot to me, but it's a lot to a lot of people.
I understand.
That's the only point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And I hadn't asked for 4 cents, 5 cents, 1 cent. Those are for demonstration purposes.
I understand.
So you want the last word?
No, why don't you let that be the last word?
Okay.
You got it.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. All right, very good. You'll love this one. Now moving on to a bonding item. Item number 3 is the first and final reading and a public hearing to consider adopting a third supplemental ordinance to the master ordinance established in the city of Temple, Texas, reinvestment zone number 1, tax increment revenue financing program, to authorize the issuance of City of Temple bonds for the City of Temple, Texas Reinvestment Zone Number 1, tax increment revenue bonds. Ms. Bernard,
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council.
you bet. Thank you.
I wanted to speak to Mr. Pavelski real quick. If he wants to come see me and Melissa, we'll sit down and go over the budget with them in detail. Yes.
Mr. Tough Guy.
Oh, okay,
Go ahead, Ms. Bernard.
I will. I'll see if I can arrange it. But before you, Mayor, in very simple terms, this ordinance is to delegate authority to the Director of Finance, or in her absence, the city manager as the pricing officer to execute pricing certificates and finalize pricing within parameters defined in the ordinance. The parameters are not to exceed par of 51.7 million. The source of payback for these bonds is not tax, but reinvestment zone revenues. The term in years is 20, and maximum maturity date is August 1, 2041. And then also it authorizes the type of sale, whether it be negotiated, competitive, or private placement. Just to refresh, you saw this in your financing plan amendment, but these bonds, it's 17.3 million in taxable to construct 2 parking garages. And then the 2021 tax exempt bonds of 27.5 million include dollars to construct the outer loop from Windland to McLean Parkway, downtown city center and Hahn construction, and then also FBO at the airport. And you can read on down the list. Tentative timeline of events. We've gone through bond rating and insurance conference calls. Tonight is the delegation of the ordinance, and then the plans are to go to pricing next week and actually close on the bonds on June 16th. And tonight we have Dan Wegmeller, financial advisor, and Jacqueline Hale with the bond counsel to go over in detail the transaction and the review of the ordinance. Mr. Wegmeller.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. Mayor, Council, Dan Wegmiller with Specialized Public Finance. This is pretty unique because most of the time when we do a financing, our role in working with your staff starts about 90 days out, maybe 120 days, and we get to a financing. This one started about a few days after the 2018 tax reinvestment zone issue, working to build a stronger credit. The 2018 financing, Panda is the largest taxpayer in the zone, and they had a bankruptcy and a lawsuit in place. And so the bond rating at that time from Standard & Poor's came in at BB+, which is 1 notch out of investment grade. So we got the first tranche of funding done, the tax exempt piece. The taxable piece that was to be done at that time, about $5 million, was put on the shelf. The interest rate on that piece was pushing somewhere between 4% and 5% just because of taxable and the rating. So Tracy and I and Melissa have spent a lot of time talking about the reinvestment zone, and Tracy and I over and over have focused on how to make this better, how to make this a stronger credit. And what's interesting is, from my perspective, most of the time it's pretty straightforward. You guys are a solid AA credit, one of the highest ratings possible as a city on your GO, your utility. The unique part of this financing is there are multiple entities around the region that participate and contribute revenue. And all of those entities have independent boards and councils and courts that set the rates. So no one entity sets the rates, and when an investor is buying this, they don't have an assurance that you will set the rate necessary to pay the debt necessarily. Not only do they have that risk, they have the perception that the legislature meets every 2 years, and they can do things with school finance and the funding formulas to really impact potential revenue or decide how reinvestment zones work. You have, I believe, the oldest zone in the state now. And I would argue it's probably the most productive. It's done the most, and it's been utilized in such a fantastic way to help encourage development and also infrastructure and various needs. What's really unique, so we shifted from Standard & Poor's, who carries your GO rating, your utility rating, and they did the zone rating. And we went over to Moody's Investor Service and talked them through the zone. They took the rating from the one notch below non-investment grade to 2 notches above investment grade to Baa2. By getting that movement to investment grade Baa2, we were also able to bring in bond insurance. And the bond insurers back in 2018 had talked about a premium level of around 220 basis points. And on this issue, that would have been probably about $1.2 million of a premium that they wanted just to guarantee the debt. And in the process of asking to guarantee the debt, they want us to revise some of the covenants to restrict your ability to issue future debt. They wanted to not allow the calculation to include Panda 2 or your largest taxpayer. And that was very limiting. So in visiting with Tracy and Melissa and Bryn, and we decided what should we do moving forward, that was too restrictive. So on the insurance side, we passed on it. They came back to the table and said, we won't make you have that provision. So we've worked through a lot of different elements. This is, as you know, way more than I usually say at a bond ordinance or a bond sale. But I think the effort that you all have put into it, Tracy, Bryn, just your entire staff, have really created some footing to move forward on, not only with this financing. So the savings just on the bond insurance premium, because they came down to 100 basis points from the 220 in 2018, you've saved about $700,000 just on the insurance premium to bring it down to these levels. The rating Baa2 is largely reflective of the administration and management of the zone by the city of Temple. As you all know, I've talked about a bond rating is management, financial performance, economy, and debt levels. While the debt levels are low here, the economy is strong, financial performance is strong, but the rating's low because of the Panda issue initially. The other positive thing, which was not a positive for a lot of people, but the winter storm showed that Panda was doing well and performed well for the state of Texas and for this area. So it took a lot of that risk off. So the insurance is in play. The interest rates that we're estimating for next week, we've already gotten some feedback, are somewhere in the mid-2s for the tax exempt piece. We'll firm that up next Thursday when we price, and somewhere just under 3% for the taxable piece. So you're only having a 40 or so basis point premium to go taxable to give you the flexibility to do the project that you're looking at. So we've gone from 2018, where we were looking at, 4 or 5%, to something in the 2s, if all goes well and nothing erupts over the next week, to pricing. But from the transaction standpoint, it's been amazing over the last couple of years, but really over the last few weeks. If Tracy and Melissa have been hard to get a hold of, it's because I would get calls from the rating agency asking a litany of questions, and they would respond. I would get calls from the insurance company, and staff would just jump all over it. And then we had to have the conversation about, do we give up flexibility to the insurance company? And we got on conference calls to discuss that. So there's been a lot of work done, but the bottom line is, when we get to market, we're all breathing a big sigh of relief, because not only does this set us up well to price next week, but future projects in the zone, we have demonstrated and we've worked through the process to get an investment grade rating, to get insurance in place. And another unique twist, the bond insurer is based out of New York, New Jersey. But a few months ago, the lead contact moved to Austin, the Austin area. And so we kept pressing on him, if you're going to show up here and live, you got to know Temple, you got to know it's right up 35. It's a core piece of the state. And you really don't want to pass on this deal. So he really worked with us and got to a great place on it. So that is a real snapshot of what we've been doing to get this reinvestment zone issue up to speed and really to set it hopefully for maybe a little less time of staff time and work on future issues, but I think we're in a great place. So with that, I'll answer any questions you have on the process. Jacqueline from McCall Parkhurst is here if you have any questions on the ordinance, but that's pretty much a summary of where we're at, and give us another week and then we'll close.
Council, any questions for Mr. Wegmiller?
Mayor, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to give us those details, because Tracy and Melissa never toot their horns,
Yeah.
ever. And we try to toot their horns for them, but you've given us the tools to do it. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wegmiller. That, I think that kind of goes to our previous conversation about this council and staff understand the value of the dollar and are willing to wait and improve things before those dollars are spent in order to ultimately save significant dollars in the future. Because everything we're talking about is taxpayer money.
Absolutely.
So, very good. I appreciate that. All right. This item is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Alan Lytle, 504B Paseo del Plata, Temple, Texas. Wegmiller presents a very lovely picture, great idea, hoping that everything kind of remains the same for the next 20 years. Unfortunately, I'm not sure he's going to be able to get what he's looking for next week. Problems in the Middle East, the problems on the stock market that I watch closely because I have investments, problems on the bond market. We may end up with a very difficult time to sell $51 million worth of bonds. Thank you.
And if we do, we'll pull it back.
Exactly.
Anybody else? Anybody on the virtual platform? Nobody? All right, very good. Then at this time, I'll close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion on item number 4.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to adopt the ordinance to allow for the reinvestment zone bonds to move forward.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Judy Morales. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Need to refresh. I think I need to refresh. I think I'm the only guy without a,
Not going to give you a green button.
Help's coming.
It's not showing mine, but I voted.
I think it's waiting on me. Don't come up here and just punch a button.
Do it for him. It's locked.
Aye. Is this going to unlock or are we going to do the whole thing? Okay.
Why is your other one out?
All right, very good.
Behind you.
That was item number
4.
Item number 4 passes 5 votes to 0.
No, that was 4.
Moving on to the next item, which is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section are considered to be routine by the city council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the city council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately.
Mayor, I would like to pull item N just for a brief explanation, I presume by Ms. Davis at the comments of one of our residents.
Okay.
Sorry.
He also requested that we pull item R.
I wasn't requesting that.
Okay.
I was just requesting.
That request was made. So we're only going to pull item N?
I'm just asking for a brief explanation of item N since there was a question on it.
Okay, very good. Then at this time, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda, which is items 5A through 5U minus item N.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Do you have four votes cast already? All right, then on the consent agenda, I vote aye. There we go. Now I can really vote. Okay. That item passes 5 votes to 0. Item N reads to consider a resolution finding that Encore Electric Delivery Company LLC's application of approval to amend its distribution cost recovery factor to increase distribution rates within the city should be denied. Ms. Davis?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On April 8th of this year, Encore Electric Delivery Company filed an application for an approval of its rate increase. And that rate increase would amount to $97.8 million system-wide. The City of Temple is part of a steering committee of cities that are served by Encore, and the steering committee has recommended that the cities deny this rate increase. And what that will do is allow the steering committee to enter into negotiations with Encore on behalf of the cities that it represents to lower that increase to what it feels is a more accurate and justifiable rate increase. And then if that happens, which normally we are able to enter into a negotiated settlement for a lesser amount, then that will come back to the council in a future date to approve that settlement. And then at that point, that would be approved, and then the rate increase would go into effect after that date, but it would be at a lesser rate increase than what's being proposed today.
Very good. Thank you. Council, any thoughts or questions for Ms. Davis? Any comments?
Nope.
Very good. Then at this time, I'll entertain a motion on item N on the consent agenda.
Mayor, since I asked for clarification on that, I will make a motion to approve item N as it appears in the agenda and as Ms. Davis explained it.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Item number 5N passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to the regular agenda items. First item, item 6, is a first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance approving a rezoning request from ag zoning to light industrial zoning on 19.93 plus or minus acres situated in the J.B. Daniels Survey Abstract 259 and the M.A. Young Survey Abstract number 937, addressed as 4030 McLean Parkway. Mr. Chandler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So just to orient you to the site, the applicant is HEB, and so they have applied to rezone the 19.93 acres that you see on the screen just to the southwest of their current distribution center for the potential for future expansion. And so you look at the zoning map, you can see that the green is surrounded by light purple, which means that there's light industrial surrounding the property, and so this would provide consistency for zoning within the area and consistent with other light industrial expansion that we've seen in recent years. And so looking at our comprehensive plan and specifically the future development plan, this is a consistent request. The comprehensive plan does show this area as future industrial. And so here you can see the site, undeveloped agricultural land. And then starting to the north, on the top left-hand corner, you can see in the background the H-E-B distribution center, and then undeveloped to the south, as well as the west. And then to the east is the Walmart distribution center. So 4 notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet, and no notices have been returned in agreement or disagreement. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning request. And at their April 19th meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended unanimous approval of 8-0. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, very good, thank you. Council, any questions for Mr. Chandler?
No, sir.
At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the virtual platform. All right, there being none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item number 6 if there's no discussion.
Mayor, I make a motion for approval.
I second that motion.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Judy Morales, and we have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, if you would, please cast your vote on item number 6. Item number 6 passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to item 7 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance to amend Ordinance 2018-4923 for Phase 1 and Phase 2 of Pecan Creek South, to amend item 3A to permit a 50-foot right-of-way with sidewalks to be constructed 2 feet from the back of curb on one side of the street, and to amend item 3B to allow street trees to be installed behind the sidewalk in lieu of the planting strip between the curb and the sidewalk, and to amend item 3E to allow a side yard privacy fence on each of the second lots on the jet ski court, Lunge Drive, and Eaton Drive to be required as a condition of the certificate of occupancy for that home rather than a decorative perimeter fence. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Mayor. Well done. And thankfully, I will have some pictures to show you what exactly that all means. This is for an amendment to a 2018 Plan Development District ordinance at 2610 South Martin Luther King Drive. And so you can see the maps, just a reminder about where this is. It's just to the north of the loop, backs up to the VA, and this is on the west side of MLK. And so this is one of the shots of the property, and you can see much of the infrastructure has been installed. And the Country Lane senior housing is immediately to the south, and so you can see through a newly constructed street what that view looks like to the south. And so just a little bit of background, and to the right may look familiar to you. This was the development plan that was approved with the Plan Development District back in 2018, and basically required a minimum of 50% single family detached, traditional homes, not more than 30% of 2-family or duplexes, and then up to 20% multifamily. And it included some specific design criteria to implement concepts from TMed, Temple Medical and Education District, because this is located within the future TMed within the comprehensive plan. And some of those elements included park areas and trails, 55 feet of right-of-way, street trees and the planting strip between the street and the sidewalks, decorative fencing along MLK, sidewalk connectivity, and once again, to meet the intent of TMed. And so you saw the streets in the photos, and the bottom line is that phases 1 and 2, the streets have been constructed, utilities have been installed, and permits for a few of the homes have been issued. And so they were unable to meet a few of those standards, including the 55-foot right-of-way. So they have built the streets to 50 feet. And so what we worked with them, met with them to talk about solutions to still meet the intent of TMed in terms of sidewalks, street trees, and providing that connectivity without having them tear out anything or replat. And so that is what's before you, is solutions that we discussed and that staff is recommending, including putting the street trees behind the sidewalk. And I'll show you what that would look like. And then also allowing for wood privacy fencing that will inevitably surround the backyards of these homes to suffice for the fencing that was required, so that there isn't an additional decorative fence required along MLK. And so on the left, if you look at this drawing, this is the original ordinance street cross-section, the 55 feet with the 7-foot planting strip with the trees and then the sidewalk behind it. And so here you can see the sidewalk outlined with the trees up against the curb. And essentially what we're talking about is a 50-foot right-of-way, which would push the sidewalk within 2 feet of the curb. Trees would be behind it because of a narrowed planting strip, but still including the same sidewalk width and these same trees, just a different location. And 17 notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet. One was returned in disagreement. You can see that was a property owner to the south who was concerned about the impact this might have on his property value. But just to reiterate that this is only an amendment to the street cross-section that we've talked about, and then also the fencing options. So staff recommends approval of the request to amend ordinance 2018-4923 to allow the following, and this is just for phases 1 and 2 that have been constructed. Phase 3 in the future would still have to meet the standards of the ordinance, and that is 50 feet right-of-way with sidewalks to be constructed within 2 feet of the back of curb, the trees to be installed behind the sidewalk rather than in the planting strip by the street, and then lastly, the side yard privacy fencing for these homes would suffice for the decorative fencing requirement on those sections, not having 2 fences. And at the April 19th meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended 8-0, recommending approval per staff's recommendation. And happy to answer any questions. Go back to an exhibit if you like. Take a look.
I'd like to reread that description.
Oh, please.
Ryan, I was just wondering,
Yes,
why did they change the fencing from decorative to wooden? Because wooden doesn't last very long.
Sure. And so let me go back to one of these exhibits. Actually, so if you see the green squares along MLK, Encore actually purchased those lots for the new utilities. They actually didn't have an easement there previously. And so the residential lots essentially back up to the Encore property. And those residential lots would already have the privacy fences, and rather than also enclosing Encore lots, which may or may not be permitted, just to allow that privacy fencing that would be installed to suffice to provide that screening that previously was envisioned to be, something like a wrought iron, or, it was not determined what that decorative fencing would be, but, typically that might be wrought iron or some kind of aluminum that looks like wrought iron. So that's the request. It would not, for sections that don't have homes backing up to MLK, there are some proposed park spaces, and my understanding is that this request would not replace the need to have a fence there, especially if you've got park along MLK. It would just be where the privacy fences are already proposed.
Mr. Chandler, am I understanding this
Mm-hmm.
correctly? The agreement was a 55-foot street right away.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And they built a 50-foot right away.
Correct.
Any particular reason?
Slipped through the cracks. And
That's a pretty big slip.
yes, sir. And so what I should clarify is that pavement width
Same.
is the same.
It's the
And
right of
so
way.
it's the additional 5 feet that really comes out of that planting strip. Normal is 50.
Why did we want 55 in this one to begin with?
To accommodate that additional planting strip between the sidewalk and curb per TMed, to have a very similar, TMed type cross section.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Brian, TMed has lighting particulars.
Mhm.
Are they adopting any of the TMed lighting designs?
That was not part of the ordinance, so I'm assuming not. That's
Too late to get it in?
not too late to get it in. Just keep in mind that those lights tend to be about $6,000 a piece. 3 to 4 times the price of a typical light. So
Never mind.
But-
I understand.
Okay.
And Mr. Moneybags out here would be unhappy, I can
Sure.
see. Thanks.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
One other thing, Brian,
Yes, ma'am.
would they consider any other type of material rather than the wooden? That'd be,
I'm sorry, would you
they
mind repeating
consider
the
any other
question?
kind of material instead of wooden fence? Is there any other thing that they might look at?
For
For
the side
for the
yards
side
of those
yards.
fences we're
Mhm.
talking about,
Mhm.
and still providing the privacy
Right.
element, that
Would you pass that
that's something
along?
to be considered. You could, for example, you could require stone or masonry columns,
Mhm,
every 50 to 100 feet,
mhm.
so to still provide a little bit more of a different aesthetic element that's within that same intent of, having something a little more decorative.
Well, I think it would last a lot longer and it would look, we don't want to lower any standards either, especially in that area.
Sure.
So I would,
So will there be any equipment? They're just doing that to buy right of way, correct? Will there be any equipment that they're trying to shield?
Oh, for Encore?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of. No, sir, just utilities.
Well,
So am I-
underground utilities or above ground lines,
Overhead.
overhead
And
utilities.
actually, those utilities are already there.
Yeah, they are.
There just wasn't an easement. So apparently when MLK was widened, those utilities moved, but the easement did not.
So this is just sort of cleaning up back
Yes,
the
ma'am.
back issues.
That's correct.
Anything else?
So with reference to Ms. Morales' question about
Making your motion,
potential
if you want to.
columns
Mhm.
periodically in the fencing. I mean, she's absolutely right, that along MLK, that would be much more attractive than just,
Sure.
is it, again, if we add that, we're adding cost to the developer.
Saving them a ton of-
Yes.
saving them a ton of money not
Th-
having
That,
to
that
have
is,
much
that is
stuff
true. We,
Yeah.
the other option was to, have them replat and dedicate additional 5 feet of right-of-way and perhaps impact utilities. And so just something to consider.
Mr. Williams, what did you say?
I said, by changing it, it's saving the developer a great deal of money to bring it into compliance.
So
So doing
adding,
something on the fence is not, I mean, it's not an
it's
issue.
not, so you're saying it's not a really bad issue, potentially?
Cost-wise?
Yeah,
No.
okay. So we would
It's cheaper than
need,
having rip it out.
right.
Much cheaper.
So you're saying we would need to include an idea like that in a motion?
That's correct.
Well, certainly along MLK, that would be much more visibly nice.
Sure.
So the original plan was to require decorative fencing.
Correct.
And so
So they're asking for something other than
Less.
that, just having the fencing that will already be there as a side and backyard privacy fence to essentially serve that purpose.
it could be approved and just simply deny the fencing request.
It's an option as well.
I'm sorry.
And then
what-
that would still require the decorative fencing, right? Thought there would be no fencing.
That's right.
Okay. Yep. All right, very good. Anything else for Mr. Chandler?
Nope.
All right, then at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Brian?
Alan Lytle, 504B, Paseo del Plata, Temple, Texas. I'm not going to be living there, but I'll be driving down MLK. My biggest concern with a sidewalk 2 feet from a very, very busy street is the same concern I have with West Adams. That sidewalk is right next to the street. Anybody that falls is going to fall into traffic. MLK would be the same way. I know they don't want to put a fence, but a small 3-foot, 4-foot fence between the sidewalk and the street might prevent somebody from being killed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Brian, that's not where the fence is being discussed presently,
That-
location.
Correct. However, Mr. Lytle, it makes a good point that there would be a fence on MLK, but we're not talking, that would not be part of this street cross-section. There aren't trees proposed along MLK, just a sidewalk and actually a 6-foot sidewalk. But that's a good point to be able to along MLK because it's a arterial major thoroughfare to push that sidewalk as far away from the street as possible. But that's not what we're talking about for this. We're talking about the streets that are listed that where sidewalk is on the plan within the subdivision.
They
So-
haven't built the sidewalk on MLK yet.
Correct.
So that's, his suggestion is a later issue. It doesn't pertain to this.
Correct. But we'll
Right.
certainly take note of that
Yeah.
and work with the developer to push that sidewalk when it's constructed as far away from MLK as feasible.
Okay. Was there, are you wanting to speak?
I could possibly provide a little more clarification so that.
Name and address.
My name is Keith Caldwell. I'm with Yalgo and with WBW, with the developer.
All right.
I'm the engineer. I didn't design this project, and as he mentioned, some things kind of slipped through the cracks through that design. But we were unaware that Encore has a transmission line that runs along. It's not just a service line, it's a transmission line. So that's why they ended up buying the front lots there. So they bought 50 feet. So with the fencing that you're talking about, D.R. Horton will be developing the property. I can't say for certain, but they typically build a nice fence on the front of the property, but it'll just now be backed up 50 feet from the right of way. And I know we have some easements in there where they kind of do little entrances on all the roads. So that leads me to believe that they will build more of a decorative fence than just a wooden fence. And then also the reason I think the rule was in there was we had to build that fence first before a certificate of occupancy could be granted for any of the homes. And so now, since they're not going to be right up on MLK Drive, when they build those homes, those first ones, they're going to put the fence in at that time. Not so much in lieu of doing the decorative fence. They just, instead of doing it first and foremost.
So there won't be a decorative fence, there'll just be the fence for those houses who are now 50 feet off of Martin Luther.
I can't say for certain because it would have been fences for houses as well.
They're not gonna be any houses.
Well, not now. It'll just be backed up 50 feet.
Yeah.
But I know we still have corner easements so they can put in entrances.
Entryway.
And that leads me to believe that they will put a decorative fence, kind of typical to most of their other subdivisions that they do.
Mr. Chandler, would it be appropriate for that to come back to y'all when they get that plan put together? Because I think you got the sense of what they're talking about. They say they want what we want. That'd be appropriate?
Absolutely. And if all they need is clarification that the fencing is required prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, then that's also something that you can condition and still leave the decorative fencing requirement, and we just work with them to do a decorative fencing that makes sense.
Does it work?
That'll work. Just no wooden fence.
Brian, I'm sorry, I may be the only council member completely confused, but I am. And if somebody else will make a motion that includes attractive fencing on MLK, I'll be happy. But if I don't need an explanation, if everybody else understands it and somebody's ready for a motion.
Does everybody understand where the fencing's going?
That I understand.
Brian, can you speak to why the condition for decorative perimeter fencing was in the original ordinance, and what, by moving it back, what has changed that would change that recommendation from staff?
Well, so let me caveat my answer with, we didn't have a lot layout at that point, and so didn't know whether it might be multifamily complex, because that is still an option up to 20%. Could be multifamily. Not sure whether they will actually develop that, but either way, the intent originally was just to improve the corridor and have that perimeter fencing just aesthetically to improve MLK.
So what about the revised plan would make that different?
It pushes it back.
Just further
50 feet,
from,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
Who will maintain that 50 feet?
It's a good question. My understanding is that there would be an HOA. Has that been confirmed? Okay.
It'll be the HOA's responsibility.
Okay. And that's something to consider too, is just clarifying that the HOA would maintain just the fencing facing MLK, which as well as can be arranged, that you all don't have an easement. I don't think you have a fence easement established on those plats, just so that they automatically have access to maintain them, but. Right. Right. Yeah.
I remember putting 15-foot kind of corner easements for entryways, and typically when we do that, we put a 5-foot fencing easement for a decorative type fencing that the HOA can maintain. But I didn't bring I wish I'd have brought a plat with me that has already been recorded, because I think it's on there, but I'm not certain.
But it sounds like we need to have that language stated today.
It would be preferable, just hearing the questions and concerns, and ultimately, if there are sections of wood privacy fencing that might have a masonry column every 50 to 100 feet, in terms of if you all are comfortable with us working with them to come up with something that makes sense, that is decorative, that improves the corridor. But in terms of maintenance, just clarifying that if there is going to be an HOA, it makes a lot of sense for the HOA to be responsible for that important side of the corridor.
Well, I assume it would be, if there's not going to be an HOA, it'd be appropriate for the developer to maintain that.
But is the developer going to be continually involved?
Might be if we said he had to be. I don't know. This has got a lot of loose ends.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So are we, Council, are you comfortable tying up those loose ends by making amendments to this item? Or would you rather wait, table this item, have them tie up the loose ends and bring it back?
I'd rather for them.
Another option,
Come back for
We
a
come
second.
back for a second reading.
yeah, I was just going to mention, remember this will require a second reading, so
And not on consent?
we can bring it to regular agenda
Yeah,
for certain.
Yeah, if we're not going to table it, let's be sure and bring it to regular agenda. Otherwise, it shows up on consent.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Y'all okay with that?
And you don't have to do it that way. I just
Yeah.
was mentioning that as
I
a
would really
alternative
prefer
option.
if we can table it and dump it back on planning to work
You're
out the
welcome.
details and bring it back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Yeah. I
Are
mean,
there
see,
any
it's-
time constraints we need to worry about? Is that going to be an issue?
Yeah, we've sold lots already to the home builder, and I believe they're already starting or trying to get started.
So if we approve it now and then require that it be actually read in, not on consent, then we're not going to hurt you time-wise, correct? That's a question for you too, Brian.
So it'd be the same.
Yes, I will answer
Yeah,
that.
but keeps the
There, yes,
timeframe the same.
that does not affect the timeline. It
Okay.
just, second reading just has a little more at stake than
Okay.
usual.
All right, well then well,
And you can also always table the second reading if, when we get to
Right.
that point, you guys are not comfortable that the solution meets what you were looking for.
I'm comfortable with that, Mayor.
okay, well, I can't make a motion, so. Is there anybody on the virtual platform? All right. Then at this time, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item number 7.
Okay, Mayor, I'm going to try. I make a motion that we approve at the first hearing, but deny the plan for the wooden fence to be part of you're everybody shaking your head, no?
Me?
Oh, no, Susan.
No, I can't understand what you're saying. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to figure out how to say this correctly, and I'm not sure how to do it. I wanted to make a motion that we approve this reading with the exception of the plan for a wooden fence in the plan or the,
And just for clarification, those side yards where there already will be a privacy fence,
right,
you're fine with that. You just don't want that to be the
correct,
substitute for
Right.
a decorative fence.
right.
Okay.
Yes.
We also need to add that the HOA is responsible.
Okay,
for
and
the-
also we want to include that in the event the HOA will not take care of that strip, then the developer will be responsible.
Are you including masonry columns every X number of feet?
I think we could work through that. But we understand that
Okay.
we want the
Okay.
And
decorative.
That's fine.
we'll bring that back in 2 weeks, work with the developer and show you all what
All right.
we've
So
worked out.
we've got a little bit of a mess going on here. We have one council member amending a motion of a second.
No, I did not
So
amend.
can,
No,
can,
no,
Mayor,
I added
didn't
that.
amend anything. I
well,
asked a
you
question.
asked her, yeah.
I
and
didn't
that's-
ask her to amend. I
okay.
asked a question because I
So,
couldn't understand what she
staff.
said.
My
Help us
recommendation.
clean this up.
Yes. So my recommendation is to make a motion to approve the item as presented.
There you go.
It is very clear to staff that we have work to do between now and the next reading. And so instead of trying to make a motion that incorporates all of those things, my recommendation would be to just move to approve it as presented. You've already directed staff to do the work with the developer, and then we can come back. And on the second reading, we'll have hopefully achieved the goals, and it can be a clean second reading motion to approve as presented.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the,
I'll second it.
Just land that plane, right?
click my
Okay, very
button.
good. So
There we go.
on item number 7, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Morales to approve. We have a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Item number 7 passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to item number 8 is to consider adopting a resolution electing a mayor pro tem for the city of Temple. So we'll need a nomination and a motion.
I thought it was done.
Mayor, I'll be very happy to make a motion. Or you want a nomination first, right? Or do you want a motion?
Did I just mess that up?
Yep.
Robert's rules calls for nominations. And then if there's only one nominee, then you can have a motion. If there's more than one nominee, then you would need to take a vote.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to nominate Mayor Pro Tem Morales, nominate Ms. Morales for Mayor Pro Tem of the city of Temple.
Ms. Morales, this is your chance to
Yes.
nominate somebody.
I second that nomination.
Wendell moved too fast for you, Judy. All right, very good. We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Williams. Council, if you would please cast your vote.
Guess I vote for myself.
You better.
Item number 5 passes 5 votes to 0. Congratulations, Mayor
Thank you.
Pro Tem Morales.
Thank you.
And,
Appreciate it.
the time is 10 minutes until 7, and thank you all for attending tonight's meeting.